Okay, so I am going to be kind of doing this as a solo interview style to introduce myself and who I am and why I do what I do. So I'm just going to be kind of going through and answering a series of questions that I've been asked to answer before, and hopefully this will give you a little insight as to who I am and make you feel like we are connected in some way, shape, or form. Whether you ever decide to connect with me or not, I want you to know that you are welcome. Okay, so I'm going to start with a little bit about my background and what inspired me to become a photographer and now a business coach to aspiring creative entrepreneurs, mainly photographers, because that's what I specialize in, but I do coach more than photographers. So basically, I started off with I didn't always want to be a photographer. Let's just put it that way. I've always been a creative at heart. I've always been an artist first. I would spend hours upon hours in my room, either singing to music, dreaming about being an opera singer, or drawing. Those were like my two favorite things. I'd also just like create little characters and write stories and poetry. I've always been a very creative soul. For as long as I can remember. When I was 14, I had gotten a 35 millimeter camera as a gift. And yeah, I just started snapping away with that thing. Definitely like travel photos, but I remember thinking when we would, well, not like I traveled a whole lot, but if and when we did travel, I remember taking landscape photos, but always wishing that there was somebody in the picture. I wanted to take portraits. So from there, I started to dress up my mom, or I dressed up my friends or my brother. He was really thrilled about. He was my little model for a while, and I would do photo shoots with them. So I would take them, I would pick out their clothes, and I would pose them, and I would tell them where to stand, and basically I would direct them, and it would turn into this big creative shoot with my friends. We would dress up and take pictures of each other. I remember one shoot specifically, we did Spice Girls theme. So yeah, if you are of that genre, you know what I'm talking about, the Spice Girls. So that is what kind of started my creative journey. However, I didn't think that I would ever become a photographer until I started looking a lot at fashion magazines, and I always thought that I would be an actress. So I moved to California straight out of high school, lived out of my car because I had no money. Did that whole thing. I've lived quite a colorful life in that regard. I didn't do the college thing like most people. And I essentially went to California, lived out of my car, and started acting. Like I got a few gigs. I was background acting for a while, made some good money off of some commercials and appearing in series and things like that, and then doing like independent films and independent projects. So that was really fun. I was in front of the camera for years, and when I was in front of the camera and working with other creatives, I started taking their pictures, which I thought was really fun. Like I would dress them up and I'd start taking their pictures, and some of my friends were represented by agencies, and the agencies would use the photos. So that was fun. But then that industry for me, and some of the things that we had to do, not had to do, but just the politics behind the scenes of the acting industry in that world was not for me. And I experienced some very traumatic things. I mean, I guess I didn't think of it as traumatic at the time, but looking back for a young person, it was. And it started to kind of just wear on my soul. I didn't want to be told what to do anymore. I didn't want to sign my life away. I didn't want to basically take direction from people who were not respectful of people in general. So I decided to move back to, well, I didn't move back to Arizona. I decided I was going to take a break from California at that time, kind of regroup. So I went back to Arizona and I kind of recalibrated and just thought about what what I should do, what I could do, and photography was just calling me over again. And I just, felt like, oh, well, this is what I do in my spare time. I really enjoy this. I like directing people. I like having a little bit more control, and I like the creative aspect of it where I can like create these really amazing images that would come out. I mean, they never came out the way I wanted them at first, and that's always the beginner route of photography. Is the thing you have in your head is probably not exactly what you imagined when it comes out. But anyways, that is something that I felt called to do. So immediately coming back to Arizona, I looked into like photography schools and like different degrees that I could get. I stumbled upon media and digital imaging, which I jumped into because I thought that was really cool. I loved working with Photoshop, and actually before I even learned photography, like the proper photography of lighting and all that, I was exploring a lot of Photoshop, and I would Photoshop all of my pictures. Like I would never keep them as just a picture, an image. I really had to learn to just like a simple image. I really always tried to make it something that it wasn't. Like I'd try to make it this art piece in Photoshop. So yeah, I was one of those beginning photographers that was editing the shit out of their photos. Yeah. So long story short, I, took media and digital imaging. I took a lot of art classes and just kind of fell in love with the creative aspect. I just felt like the possibilities were endless in like the video and creating and editing and graphic design and just all the things combined. I really loved. So I got into that. I started networking and assisting a fine art photographer as well as a commercial photographer. So these were two different photographers in two different genres, which was really interesting because I got to kind of like model and both like learn editing and posing and things like that for a fine art photographer. And I got to like inject my creativity into like our collaborations, which was really cool because they were more like collaborations. He always valued my opinion and what I thought about editing and how a picture should look, which I thought was really cool that he valued my aesthetic basically enough to listen to me sometimes, not all the time. And then as far as the commercial photographer, I really learned, like we did shoots for hotels and celebrities, and I was his personal assistant, and also I did editing for all of his commercial work. So, and then I assisted him with like the lighting, and he really just threw me into, he was like a natural born creative, and his wife was like the business person. So I learned both aspects of that. And he really just threw me into the business and commercial side of things. And I learned a lot of what I know today through working with this commercial photographer. So that is kind of my story of how I came upon photography and how I have my business today. And I believe that my business today is really a blend of like that fine art and commercial, which is interesting to most people. I knew that I did not want to be a wedding photographer, even though I did try, and I have shot many weddings. I've shot many portraits. I actually was a portrait photographer for a long time. I did shoot weddings here and there, dabbled in that, but ultimately those were not my things. That's not why I got into photography. I didn't necessarily love just taking pictures. That wasn't my ultimate goal. I wanted to create stories. I wanted to be creative. I wanted to direct. I wanted to have a feeling wrapped around it, and I wanted it to be more in that, and I wanted to tie fashion into it somehow, and because that was my main goal, was to try to be a fashion photographer. And it's funny because I loved portraits too, but I loved doing like, it was always other creatives or other like business owners or something that I loved, just taking them on singly and just working with them one-on-one. And then doing like creative campaigns for like fashion brands I really loved because I got to direct and create. So that's kind of how I came to do the type of photography that I do today. I found a way to work it into the system, and brand photography just exploded in the last few years. So I feel really fortunate and really lucky to have practiced this for so long. And there wasn't really a space for brand photography for a long time, not the kind that I was doing. So I felt like an outcast. I really felt like I should be fitting in, and I struggled with that for a long time. Like, I struggled in with this wanting to do what I wanted to do, with like living, doing my creative work and being authentic versus what everyone else was doing, what I felt like I should be doing. So I did try to fit myself into a box, which it doesn't work for me. Never has, never will. I'm an INFP personality type, and that's just not me. I will never fit myself into a box as much as I try, and everyone can tell that I am not being authentic right off the bat. So I knew I struggled with it for a long time, that I couldn't just be a wedding photographer. That wasn't my calling, and I couldn't make it be my calling. Not even if everyone said that's where the money is, which everyone did tell me that. I had lots of mentors tell me, it's like either you do these big commercial projects or you are a wedding photographer. And that's how you're going to make money. And even the commercial in fashion is so hard to get into unless you know people personally. So that was basically the information that I was given. There wasn't a whole lot of information out at the time this was back in 2012. I mean, even before, that was when I opened my business, or when I started my business. But before then, there was not really information. Nobody wanted to give a whole lot of information unless you like actually applied for a mentorship or an apprenticeship for other photographers. So yeah, I was in a plethora of trying to be like everyone else, and that it didn't work. And I feel like so strongly that there is a time that everyone, like, no matter if you feel like before your time or that what you're doing is not really popular, there will be a time for you. There always comes a time for everyone in what they do and their talent and what people appreciate. For a long time, people didn't appreciate, in the fashion industry, they didn't appreciate all different types of looks. There was only one type of look a model could have, and that always frustrated me. And that's one thing that I did not resonate with the fashion industry. It went against my values deeply, that they would only take tall, skinny models. Yes, that's great, that's beautiful, but that's not majority of people. That doesn't represent the population. So if you're really trying to sell fashion, why would you just limit it to that type of look, was my thought process for that. So definitely did not resonate with the fashion industry, hence why I did not throw my soul into that. I really feel like what I created for myself is a blend of all these really unique things that I loved, but I made it my own, which is what I specialize in with helping other creatives, is really finding their unique calling, pulling out their authenticity, and really making it their own and creating a business around that uniqueness. Okay, so that was a lot of words for how I got into photography. A little bit about, so another question I'm going to read off is, how do you balance creativity with profitability in your business? Okay, this is a really interesting question, because I'm of the belief that it's really, that these two things, they definitely need to be in harmony, but it might take a while for that to sink in, especially, I feel like sometimes it's a lot easier for people that are business oriented or natural business owners to jump in to start photography business if they have like that creative streak. I've met so many like people that just rock it in business, that they're not the most talented, they don't have the greatest aesthetic, and honestly, like they just had a passion for photography, but really like their background was in business and marketing, and they really ran with it. So those people do really well. It's the creatives that don't have the business mindset that really have to learn that. So to balance making a profit with your creativity is such a must if you want to make a business out of your passion. Like, I just see so many talented artists struggle and just give up after a while. They give up on their dream of turning it into something that they can make money off of because they don't know the proper business and marketing background. They don't have those skills. But I'm telling you, I'm here to tell you, I am literally like the right-brained of the right-brained of all people. And I have taken the time in my many years, but I do have a natural knack for learning. Like, I will absorb information. I love learning, and especially if it interests me, which business is extremely interesting to me. I mean, minus the accounting and taxes and blah, 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 that stuff. But I really enjoy learning about branding and marketing, and I enjoy people and philosophy and psychology. Those are things that I really, really enjoy. So it was really easy for me to absorb that business learning aspect of it as a creative because I enjoy it. So I can imagine that it would be very difficult if you are a creative, but you just don't, or you're not interested in the business side of things. So to answer that question, how do I balance creativity with profitability? I would say by making time, and this is really important, is making time for both. Like, you have to make time for your creativity, you have to make time for the business side of things. And if you do one more than the other, it can definitely wear you out and overwhelm you and exhaust you, and it can lead to burnout. If you're a creative and you're constantly creating, but you're not turning a profit, that's not good for your soul. If you are just constantly in business mode, but you're not creating from your soul and you're not doing what you love to do, that's going to drain your spirit. So it's really important to make time for both in that aspect. And I think that scheduling is going to be your best friend. And I can't believe I'm saying that because I have never been that type of person until I had kids, that I knew that like I had to do something because I just felt like a basket case running around with my head cut off all the time, just jumping around from like business to project to kids to family. Like I just couldn't do it. So scheduling has been my best friend and has given me the freedom to balance my creativity and profitability in my business. The next question is, how do you approach branding and marketing as a creative business owner? Yes, well, since I work in the branding space, I pretty much have a pretty good grasp on branding. Marketing, I've struggled with. That's always been a little weakness of mine because I tend to I know it really well. I know marketing and I know branding really well, but I tend to love to do it for other people. It hasn't really been something that I like to do for myself. I will do it, but I don't find myself like making it a priority. I can definitely fall into the category of just wanting to do it for my clients. Like, I want to take them to the next level, and then I forget about myself. So this has been kind of a struggle for me, but I've had to do it. I've had to rebrand my entire business. I've had to think about marketing strategies, which has been difficult for me, but having a plan, to having a strategy first, and then a plan for both branding and marketing has literally saved my business. Okay, so the next question is, can you share a challenging experience you had in your business and how you overcame it? I feel like my whole business has been a challenge. Yeah, the whole business aspect of things has been a challenge. Like, I had this mantra for a while, is like, I get paid to play. I get paid to play, because I really just wanted to focus on creating, and I didn't want to handle any of the business side. I didn't want to sit and make I don't mind creating the content, but I don't want to sit on my computer and edit it and schedule it and come up with all the things. So that's really been hard. That's been very challenging. Yeah, I would say balancing the creativity, balancing a family with business has very challenging. Again, scheduling is how I overcame that aspect of it. And then really just trying to be very intentional about my time. So what I mean by that is really making certain things a priority, like making sure that I write down the 2 to 3 things that are going to move my business forward. And then I'm going to maybe do 1 or 2 of those things and be okay with it, because that's really been hard on me and I've given myself a hard time, is really just trying to think that I can do all the things. And it's been hard because I am such an ambitious and driven person, but I tend to do a lot of the stuff in my head. And when it's all going on in my head, I feel exhausted by the time I'm supposed to do it. So it's like this very strange thing that if I don't empty out my mind and I don't get clear on what it is that I'm supposed to be doing and what it is that I'm supposed to be focusing on, I can definitely fall into the category of overwhelm, and overcoming overwhelm has been a huge challenge for me in my business because I tend to be I'll just say I'm idealistic. I have a lot of ideas. I have a lot of things in my head. I see a lot of possibilities and I'm very optimistic, and all the possibilities can wear me out to the point where I just don't take action because I'm like, ooh, this and this and this and this and this. And I definitely fall into that category. So overcoming overwhelm is probably my biggest challenge, and making sure that I empty my mind. I have a yoga practice. I do a brain dump exercise in the morning where I just get out every single thought that I could possibly think of in my notes app on my phone or on paper, and just empty it out. Not that I'll come back to it. Maybe sometimes I will if I have a to-do list. But just getting it out on paper and just freeing it and having it go somewhere has been really helpful for overcoming overwhelm. Okay, here's another great question is, how do you handle competition in your field? Ooh, let's talk about that. Competition. I am of the mindset that I don't believe there's healthy competition, sure, in like sports and stuff, but in business, I really feel like it's community building. Like you should be doing community building and you shouldn't be focusing on your competition so much. That's not healthy. Yes, you have to do market research and kind of like see where you fall in the category of your competitors, but to be shining all the light on them and like constantly focusing on what your competitors are doing versus what you are doing, so not healthy. And honestly, like reaching out to people that you think are your competition and actually collaborating with them is some of like the most beneficial things you can do for your business and marketing. Even if they're like, I don't know, it's hard. Like I know that they can be in the same genre of you, maybe not doing the exact same thing, but for example, if you are a brand photographer and you collaborate with a wedding photographer or something, or you do like a talk on like how you guys run your businesses, collaborating with people that are in your industry, but they might be your competition. That might have been like a 2 different thing, but I'm trying to think of another example. Oh, for example, like coaches. Like there can be many different coaches, like there can be an entrepreneur coach and there can be a photography business coach, and maybe they collaborate and do something together, and they could be competition almost, because it's like almost like the same people, but they have their niche, but it's also combining like audiences, and maybe one does something really specific and you do something really specific. So it's finding opportunities like that where you can collaborate with people. I mean, again, probably not collaborating. I don't know. I don't think there are any rules for that. I think you can collaborate with whoever you want to. Just try not to make it a competition, and don't focus on your competition too much. Like, I would just, when I was, starting my photography business, I was following a ton of photographers. Like, that was almost all of my feed was just all these photographers and like their amazing work. And I remember just thinking to myself that I would never be good enough. I would never shoot the way that they shoot. I would never come up with the ideas that they could. And it really just took all the focus off of me, and it drained my energy. And when it started draining my energy, I noticed how I felt after looking at their work all the time, and just having that constant negative feeling of like, I just don't ever think that I can live up to that standard or be that type of photographer or shoot what they shoot. As much as I adored them and loved them, I was focusing too much on the competition aspect of it, and it wasn't making me happy. It wasn't energizing me. So I just started hitting the delete button. And that's really important that you do that to stay sane as a business owner, especially on social media, is just hit that unfollow button, just do it. Maybe not the delete. That's a little harsh, but unfollow the people that you are obsessing over, or just even notice how it makes you feel. Like, it's really great to be inspired. I think that can be really powerful. And I am one of those people that I need to be inspired on a regular basis. I tend to go to Pinterest for that because I feel like that really energizes me. But if I'm scrolling on Instagram and I'm just seeing like these unattainable beauty standards and just people like filtered out, and just photographers that are so magical that I just aspire to be like them so much, and it's draining my energy, that's when I know that it's time to stop looking at those people or just unfollow. And I can tell you, I'm much happier and I have a lot more energy when I scroll my social media, and it's just full of like inspiring, really like positive things. Like, I can tell you right now, like, none of my feed is negative or makes me feel horrible about myself on the daily. So I've really taken the time to curate my social media where it feels inspiring every time I go on it instead of energy draining. Okay, so let's see. All right, I'm going to do like one or two more questions, and then I'm going to wrap this up. Okay, so how do you stay motivated and inspired as a creative business owner? Ooh, yeah, this is a hard one, because we're not always going to have the motivation, and we're not always going to be inspired. But, sometimes, like, well, I mean, if you are a business owner, like, you have to show up. You have to show up every day. I mean, well, as many days as you work, essentially, and you have to do it whether you feel inspired or not. So kind of for me, and I've struggled with this too, is that I have felt like my emotions can get in the way of me accomplishing certain things. So for me, what I like to do is I like to have kind of like an ongoing list of the things that need to get taken care of in my business, like such as content creation or course creation or marketing or emailing or editing or social media time, whatever it is that is like running in the back of my business that I need to be updating, or like website updates or whatever it is. I make a running list of all the things that need to get done for upkeep. And I do let my intuition and my emotions guide me in the sense that, like, okay, one or two, at least, three, if I'm feeling really good that day, 3 things can get done to move the needle forward in my business and keep my business running, even when I'm not feeling particularly inspired or motivated. And that can be a lot of days. So yeah, especially just, in the state. If you are working alone, or you're just not in an inspiring environment, or some things are going on in your family life, or, just things happen on the daily, and there's a lot of things that can come up in life, but it is important to show up for yourself, and it's important to show up for your business to keep it alive. And if you're not feeling inspired or motivated, I think the key to that too is also just starting, having your bucket list of things, picking the thing that you could do, that you feel that you could do like in that moment, that would feel the most comfortable to you or the most beneficial, picking that and doing that. Like, for example, I did not feel like doing this podcast. I didn't feel like talking, essentially, and I didn't feel like writing out things either. I didn't feel like really like creating content, but the minute I started recording this, it was kind of like it started inspiring me. It started to motivate me. So sometimes you just need to like just do the action, just start doing it, and then you'll just kind of fall into it, and you'll know like if it's really just something that is not working. Like, it will not work, it will not flow, things will go wrong. If you're trying to record, the recording will mess up. If you're trying to write, your computer will die. Like, something will happen where it just like the end, like the universe will tell you like, this is not right. Like, this isn't the thing that you're needing to focus on right now. This isn't the thing. And or it just might be like a actual physical, like your body won't let you do it. And for me, like, I listen to those very much so, because I know that that's like, okay, like clearly like there's something in me that I need to be doing for myself that's good for my soul, that I might be trying to force myself to do these other things that aren't working right now. And sometimes it can be as simple as like going for a walk, or just breathing, or just taking a break before you try to do your work, or try to get back into your flow, or even start getting into your flow. Like, I always take at least an hour in the morning to do my workout or stretch or move my body of some sort. I do my brain dump, and brain dump meaning like I write everything down or put it in my notes app just to get everything out of my brain. And then I have the top three things that need to get done that day that I pick in my ongoing list of forever things that need to get done. And I pick the top three that are going to move the needle forward, that I feel most like doing. That's also important for me, because again, like, we're talking about what motivates and inspires you, and how you can, use that to catapult your business further. And if you're not feeling that way, how to get into that action. So again, just having, a running list of things that need to get done, and then picking, the top, at least one that you feel like most like you could do in that moment. And also like taking breaks when you need it, and knowing like when you haven't played enough. And by play, like, I mean like sometimes your soul will just be like, you're not inspired, you're not motivated, because you have literally just been working, and you've been working yourself into a burnout mode. So when that happens, you're like, everything will come up, and you will not feel motivated, you will not feel inspired, and it'll almost feel like there's a physical block on you, like keeping you from doing the things that need to get done in your business. So if that happens, it's really, really important that you take care of yourself first. Okay, you need to do something for yourself. You need to go on a walk. You need to read a book. You need to do something creative on your own that doesn't involve work. Even just doing something that is so unrelated to what you're working on is so helpful. Like, I love to paint when I'm just feeling like so burnt out. I love to like paint or draw or sketch or do something that is not related to photography or computer work whatsoever. So that's really helpful to stay motivated and inspired. Okay, I'm going to do one last question, and I'm going to wrap this up because I've been going on for a very long time and my mouth is getting dry. So last question is, what advice do you have for aspiring creative business owners? Yeah, well, this is a really broad topic, really broad question. I have so much advice, but really the biggest piece of advice is to listen to yourself. I think I spent a long time, and I still do this sometimes. I get caught up on like, what if I'm wrong? And following my intuition and following my own gut is wrong, and I waste all this time, spending so much time listening to myself, and it's just not the right thing that I should have done, and I waste a bunch of time, and I don't have that much time, and blah blah blah. Like, it's just it's an ongoing repetitive story that I've had to pull back on and really say, like, well, is that true? Is that true that following my intuition is wasting time? And no, it's not true, because everything that I've done out of my intuition, even if it seemed like something so random and it made no sense at that time, it somehow connected back into my creativity and my business. Like, everything connects at some point or another. And really connecting those dots, I felt like, I still am trying to connect the dots, and that's why I have coaches and mentors, and I buy courses all the time, because I still need to connect those dots. And for me, that's helpful. But at the end of the day, listening to myself and what I need to do is really valuable. And it's something that I don't think a lot of people do enough of. I think we all tend to jump onto these trends, and we see everything. These things are marketed to us like over and over and over again, and they basically brainwash us. And they brainwash us into thinking that, oh, this is the way. Well, there's a lot of ways out there, and there's a lot of different paths to get to the same place. And I think it's important to take the path that is correct for you. Take the path that speaks to you, that you are going to resonate with the most, because that's going to feed your soul. That's going to feed your journey, and you're going to have the most experience from that. Like, your experience is everything, and you might not know why you have the experiences that you do until you get to a point where you're like, oh, I know why I had that experience, and I know why it fits in this puzzle now. And it's really hard in that moment, especially with intuition and following, sometimes your internal guidance is getting to a place where you trust that, and that you don't think it's just absolutely batshit crazy at that moment. But I've always found that when I do those things, that I always find out later why I did it, why that worked or why that didn't work in that moment, because I learned a lot from what doesn't work too. And I find that really helpful when I'm teaching others. Like, I can share with them what hasn't worked for me, because I've had a lot of moments that did not work. And that's really helpful for people too. And now I know why I've had all these experiences, because I can share that with others and maybe hopefully help guide them to a place that makes them feel their best, and that they can connect with and they can grow with. So that is the long story short of my intro, and I just wanted to kind of do that in an interview format, solo, so you guys can just kind of connect with me and understand what I'm about and a little bit about who I am. Have a lot more to who I am, obviously, we all do, but that's just a little snippet for now. So I hope that you stay tuned, stay connected, and I hope that you have an absolutely peaceful day, and I will talk to you soon.